Welcome to Clever Title Pending with your host, Brian K. Morris, independent publisher, freelance hybrid author, award-winning playwright, and former mortician's assistant. Don't send him title recommendations because Brian knows exactly what he's doing. So just sit down and look pretty as Brian K. Morris scrolls through your comments and plays with his mouse. Join him on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, for Evening Pandemonium and Moonlight Madness.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night, June 23rd, 2020, and we are joined here on Clever Title Pending, where we talk about creativity and the business behind it. We're joined tonight by two people I admire greatly. How they deign to be seen with me, I'll never know. But anyway, we're going to talk about freelance writing. We're going to talk about novels. And these guys have been at it longer than I have. They've been at it longer than a lot of people. And we're going to learn what it was like to be kind of in the wild, wild west of old-time publishing here. And I'm going to let these guys tell you how darn important they are and how awesome they are. And we're going to start with, let's see, this is the part of the show where I hit the wrong button and send the other person into hyperspace. So we're going to start with Charles F. Millhouse here, and then we're going to swing it over to Bobby Nash, and then just take it from there. And we will start writing down your questions, people. You can learn a lot tonight. I plan to. So anyway, Charles, tell everybody how darn awesome you are.
I don't know how awesome I am, but a lot of people seem to like me. At least I hope they do anyway. A lot of you know me. I'm Charles F. Millhouse, independent author of 23 books. My newest one just came out, Origin Equation. And I have another Captain Hawkman book coming out this summer. You can find me at stormgatepress.com and find all things that we're doing. We're actually also going to start publishing other people. We have a couple anthologies coming out this year. One around October and one in January, early next year. And then we also have a couple books we're going to be publishing for some other people. So some exciting things are happening.
Excellent. Let's throw it now to the one, the only, Mr. Bobby Nash.
One, the only. I wish, I'm not even the only Bobby Nash that lives in my house. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been doing this, like you said, a while. I write novels primarily, but I also do short stories, comic books. That's where I got my start. I do have much like you and Charles, I do have a love of the pulpier side of things, as you can see from the, some of the posters in the background. And I love getting in the heads of these characters and telling these fun stories. And I don't know how many stories I've done. I've lost count. The last time I counted was 122. But if you look over upside the bookcase there, that's all my stuff I've written, and more to come.
Excellent. And I'm Brian K. Morris, Rising Tide Publications. I should get at least one promotion for myself. I get balled out when I don't by Cookie. And anyway, Rising Tide Pub, we write all kinds of stuff, contemporary fiction, strong female characters, science fiction, and horror. And soon we're doing some comic books, too, through Terraform Press. But for tonight, we're going to be talking to these cool people. We've got the other cool kids showing up, like Jason Waldman. And here we go, says Charles F. Millhouse. He's one of my favorites. And Carl Wisman, good evening to you. Yes, indeed. I hear a lot of good things about him. Teal Shively, who I'm going to announce will be on next week's episode of Clever Title Pending with Amy Hale. And Michaela Jade, whose daughter just got her first editing job. And Sarah, hello. Yeah, isn't that cool? And she's not, I don't even think she's old enough to drive yet. I think that's awesome. To quote the old play, talent doesn't just run through Michaela's family, it practically gallops. And Jason Waldman, good evening, gentlemen. And Bill Sartin says, good evening, Brian, Bobby, Charles, and all the Pandarians. And let's see. Oh, and here we go. Meredith Logren says, hello, everyone. We know that Charles is all that.
Thank you, Meredith.
And congrats on 23 going on 24 books. And from Sarah, and good evening from Rick Bradley, brand new. And here we go. Now we're going to launch into some questions from the audience. Jason Waltman would like to know, what is your best advice for new indie writers and the pitfalls of indie publishing? Who would like to tackle that first? What has your experience? What is your experience as far as the positive and the negative and the positive aspects of indie publishing, along with how it might relate to new writers?
It's certainly, right now, it's certainly easier to be an indie author. When I started, an indie author was kind of one of those things where people look down on you because, oh, you're an indie author. That means you're not good enough to get hired by a real publisher. That has changed. I think we've reached a point where people are more concerned about the story, the characters, than the product than they are what form it's printed in. The fact that people can read on phones, on tablets, on laptops, paperbacks, all that's there, and it's within an easy reach to people now. It's changed enough that I think it's so much easier for people to get the work out there. A downside is it's so much easier for more people to get the work out there that you are now fighting against a sea of hundreds of thousands of other people doing what you do, putting the books out through either Amazon or straight to ebooks or whatever. I mean, but like I said, it's so easy that we as writers, and I'm sure you guys have discovered this too, we have to also be the marketing guy, the promo guy. We have to be the cheerleader, the huckster. We're doing more than just writing a book. Yeah, exactly. You do whatever you can to get your work in front of people. And I think that's where the indie guys and the indie creators that you see who become successful or who get more well known are the ones that are out there doing that, or getting their name out there, getting their books out there, getting their books in the hands of readers. And that's really the hardest part, is getting it in front of the right readers, or readers that want it.
Yeah. And I started in 99, and self-publishing or indie publishing wasn't like it is now. You had to pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars just to get your book printed, not alone getting your copies and getting them out in front of people. But you didn't have Facebook, and you didn't have the resources like this show to push your work forward. So that's one of the things that's gotten better over the past 20 some years has been the print on demand and the easiness of getting your work, getting copies for yourself and getting it out. And of course, the whole ebook craze really helped, because I kind of slacked off there for a little bit. When the ebook craze kicked in, I jumped back on board, and I haven't stopped since. And like Bobby said, it makes it so easy for everyone to get a book published that there are a lot of indie books out there that aren't very good. You have to be as best as you can be to put something out. If you're not going to be the best that you can be, then you need to stop doing it and rethink what you're doing. And I think that all the time when I'm sitting at the keyboard. Is this the best I can be today? And so you have to think of those things and be the cheerleader and get on shows like this and talk to people, pick up the phone, do whatever you can do to push yourself and say, I'm here among all of these other great writers like Brian, like Bobby, like Amy Hale, all these incredible writers. You have to be on their level or better, or you'll get lost.
Absolutely. There's also the biggest change is who we are promoting our work to. Being an indie creator, I'm sure none of us are pitching our work to bookstores. We have cut out the bookstore middleman. We are going straight toward readers. And because a lot of bookstores won't carry indie indie books for various reasons. You know, a lot of it has to do with the non-returnability of a print-on-demand book, things like that. But so it used to be that when I first started, we spent all of our promotion trying to convince stores to pick it up. Now I go straight to people that like to read and try to find my audience of readers, not someone to sell to readers. And I think that makes a big difference in how indies go about things, because we're not worried about the middle guy. We're worried about the person that's actually going to consume the book we've written or the story we've written.
And the more people you get out of it, the more profit you're going to make for yourself.
Yeah.
You're not giving that bookstore a little bit of money to carry your book. Yeah, there are some local stores in your hometown, I'm sure, that will carry your book.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are even in some areas places that have set up little cubicles in like secondhand stores and things like that, and sell just independent books that have done fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. Cutting out the middleman and going right to the readers where you need to go.
Yeah. Like I make of the books I do myself now, the stuff that I do through publishers, I don't always have a say in how they do, you know, what the promotion or the distribution system is. But in the books I do through my imprint, the Ben Books imprint, I make sure that they are available should a bookstore want them, or if a reader wants to walk into Barnes and Nobles or their local mom and pop bookstore and say, I want the Snow book, they can order it and get the bookstore discount. So I haven't completely cut them out, but I understand that it's very rare that a store is going to just stock one of my books unless someone's asked for it, or they know me, or they have a readership that has read some of my stuff. So,
yeah. Now, Jason asked about the pitfalls of indie publishing, and all three of us, granted, we are cheerleaders for doing the DIY book experience. I would say probably I will address this: the pitfall of indie publishing. The good part is you have total control over the product. The bad part is you are in charge of all the product. So editing and the choice of your covers and everything, that falls on you. Now, here's the secret, though. You can find out anything you need to know about it. You can hire people who are incredible professionals who can, put your book cover together, format your book for whatever, paperback, hardcover, whatever publishing format you want it to be in. And all of this, I tell people that there is a secret trove of knowledge, and I got to swear everyone to secrecy on this one, okay? I don't want this getting out. It's called Google.com. Okay, just ask. You have. Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby. This is your last appearance. The trapdoor will activate now.
Google.com.
I'm glad I can help you, Bobby. But seriously, everything you need to know is out there. It's if it's not on Google, it's on YouTube. Now,
I will give you. I'll add something to that. I'll give you a secondary one. Secondary thing. What I've learned most, and I'm going to say most indie creators, if you ask them, they will tell you. If you ask a question, most indie creators will go, yeah, I'll tell you how, it's not like we're going like, okay, I know what I'm doing and let me wall up this information so nobody else can get it. I've learned a lot from talking to my fellow indie creators. It's like, hey, I run into this problem. How did you deal with it? And, like I said, 99% of the time they're like, oh yeah, no problem. And we have a discussion. So it never hurts to ask, you'll find a lot of people that are happy to give you advice, and it's so that's good too. And if you want more of a personal hands-on answer as opposed to the Google answer. So, but both ways are very good.
And I always start out by saying, this is what works for me.
Right.
This may not work for you, but take what I've told you and tweak it for you.
Mm-hmm. Right, because we all have different goals. Like all of our goals are not the exact same thing. So if you're gonna, Charles has his goals, Brian, you have your goals, I have my goals, and they may go in one, they may all be, we're publishing books, But, one of us may say, my goal is to be a New York Times bestseller. My goal is just to put out books every month. So you have different ways of, I want to, my goal is to have a movie made out of my book or whatever. I'm doing this like I'm holding a book. Sorry. and yeah, this is how prepared I am. Yeah. Well, see, that's one thing I do notice that Brian and I have in common. We both talk with our hands. I think Charles might be sitting on his or something. or he's just managed to. Yeah. So it's having those, knowing where you're going or where you want your indie press or your indie books to go makes a big difference too. And that comes with things like knowing your audience. The audience I'm pitching you pitch a young adult audience, a YA book. You don't pitch that necessarily to the same audience you pitch a pulp story, etc. So you have to kind of know where you want to go, and you kind of aim your career that way. So it's like Charles said, when people give you information, so I try to do the same thing. It's like, well, this is what worked for me, and you can kind of take it from there. But it's a good bit of advice to have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, great answers, guys. And Jason, I hope that you got some information out there. You probably sprained your wrist trying to take notes. But if you have any more, please let us know. Great question, Jason. Thank you. Rick Bradley, who a year ago was not a published author, to let you guys know, and within 6 months, he got his first published work out. I'm taking full credit for him. Anyway, Rick Bradley wants to know, gentlemen, what author has inspired you the most?
Does that mean he owes you 10%?
Ask you first. How about that? Yeah. Sorry?
Does that mean he owes you 10% since you're responsible?
I'm not letting him off the hook that easily. My pimp hand is strong, Bobby.
Sorry, Charles? I'll let you go first, Charles, since I went last time. Yeah.
Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, was a big inspiration for me. But it wasn't until I met Terry Nation, who created the Daleks for Doctor Who. I met him at a convention back in '88. And I was fortunate enough to sit down at the table with him at a restaurant and have dinner with him. And over drinks, he talked to me about writing. And when I walked out of that restaurant, I knew what I wanted to do.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's my two biggest inspirations are those two men.
Nice. When I was a kid, my mother read a lot when I was especially when I was younger. And then she read a lot. And so as a kid, I was like, well, that just seems like something I want to do. And so back in the 70s, this was, when like getting the Reader's Digest, big collections of annotated books, which, I never knew what they cut out of those things. But I started reading those, and I became enamored of reading that way. And the first book I remember reading was one called The Snowbound Six. It was by Richard Martin Stern. I know that because years later I went and looked it up, found a copy, and bought a copy for myself. It's a little like just a pulpy adventure thing about this family that gets trapped in a snowstorm on a mountain. And that book really formulated my love of that kind of action adventure-y storytelling that I still do today. And so that was a big one on just as a reader getting inspired to try to write. I've met a lot of writers over the years from a personal experience. An author who inspired me a lot, my friend Beverly Connor, when I met her the first time, I met her through a writing teacher of mine, and she had several books out at that point. And I remember we were talking at a party, and she gave me one of the most important pieces of information that kind of shaped what I was doing. Not the writing so much, but how I went forward. And it had to do with the fact that nobody's going to care about my book more than me. So why should I expect anybody to promote my book better than me? And I had never heard that before. And it was one of those things that stuck with me. And it helped me start start studying how to promote and how to do marketing. And so I learned a lot based off of that. And so that was very helpful.
Very cool. And the authors who inspired me the most, of course, are Bobby Nash and Charles F. Millhouse, because I want them to come back. And we want to say a quick hello to our friends at iHeartRadio who are listening to this podcast. And if you can come on the air sometime when we're on Facebook or YouTube, you might want to, because our comments, which I'm not sharing right now, or else the show would be about 2 days long. Our audience is a little rowdy tonight, having to do with whiskey, and I've never heard the term crotch fruit before. So anyway, come join us sometime. You might be as startled and horrified as I am sometimes. Anyway, Rick Bradley has another question. What genre do you want to tackle that you are afraid to try? Interesting. Would you even want to try a genre if you were trepidatious about it? You know, what I guess we'll refine the question. What genre have you not written in, and this was on my list too, that you would like to take a stab at?
I've never done high fantasy or like urban real fantasy stuff. I do have a couple of guys who are publishers that have told me that this was a conversation on Facebook once, and when I mentioned that, they were like, if you ever decide to write one, we'll publish it. So it kind of has me motivated. It's on my list of things that I want to do one day. And then, Westerns was another one that I tried several years ago. This is where the beauty of anthologies come in. You want to try your hand at something, find an anthology that's doing it, write a short story, see if you like it, as opposed to spending 6-8 months on a novel and you realize, man, I hate writing Westerns. So fantasy would probably be the one I've not really dipped my toe too far into.
Yeah, I'm about
sure.
the same way. High fantasy, like barbarians kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've written fantasy, like I've done a Western vampire trilogy. So I took the two genres and mixed them, and I had a blast with it. I eventually want to go back to writing something in the Old West. Brian and I have talked about something recently, and I've been toying around with an idea. But high fantasy, I've got an idea for a barbarian I want to write. I just haven't. You guys can contest to this. You have so many ideas, so many hours in the day. And I only do this in the summertime. In the winter, I'm working full time, so I have a limited time how much time I can write. So I have to pick and choose what do I want to write the most first. So it just keeps pushed back. Hopefully, one day I can bring it forward. We can start putting it together. So.
And the ideas keep coming. They never seem to stop. Yeah.
I'd get a little worried if they did, but as it is, I'm going to have to keep writing about 3 years after I'm dead in order to catch up. So
I figure I'm going to have to live to be at least 200 to get everything done.
You'll still think of more. You'll be
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to have ideas and say, someone get a pencil.
And for those of you who are here live, Michaela J, thank you for sharing where you're listening to the show from in the bathtub. That's fine, and it does help. Believe us, it does. And another one from Rick Bradley. Rick Bradley here knows the value of when we get some experts on here to start taking notes and stuff, because that's how he and I met. Rick Bradley would like to know: do you have a 1-star review that you just love?
I've never gotten a 1-star review.
I don't know if I have or not.
I've gotten 3-star reviews. Like I've said the last time I was on the show, I don't read my reviews, even the 5-star reviews, because I'm afraid that if I read a 5-star review, I'll get a swollen head. And if I read a 3-star review and there's a lot of criticism, I won't want to write. My wife reads them, especially the 5-star reviews, and she'll say, use this in promotion. She'll take a out of the review and say, use this when you're promoting. But I try not to read my reviews because I'm afraid that they'll drag me down either way.
I'm the opposite. I've always heard that, never read your reviews, but even the ones, and I had a few that where people didn't care for, something or didn't like the book. I've had a couple of those, and but when I go through and I see them, I leave a little thanks for the review. That's it. I don't argue, or because that way lies madness. We all know that. But I thank everyone for leaving a review, and I found that publicizing the reviews has become a excellent promotional tool, where I'm saying, hey, check out this, and I share them all, good and bad. Hey, check out this review of whatever. And I share the review on social media, and it's still a way to promote the book without me going, hey, have you bought this book? No, it's like, hey, read what someone said about this book. Mm-hmm. And so when I get reviews, now it is hard. It took me a while to get to where I didn't take them personally, because, I've had a couple where this didn't work or that, and, it takes some, there's a sting, but I've been doing this a while. So I've kind of gotten to where that sting hasn't, it doesn't sting as much as it used to, but I use, like I said, I found it's a good promotional tool. And like I said, I don't respond to them or anything like that, or make quick comments about the review. Just, hey, we got a 1-star review from Brian K. Morris. Here it is. And, and thank you for that. And there's the review, and people can read it. It's that kind of thing. Just get out there, and, it gets people's eyes on the book. And reviews are important. I also think that helps too when I'm sharing that, because people see those and go, oh, I should leave a review. I read that. And so, see, there you go. Yeah. So leaving book reviews are awesome for us, because it does help more people see our books.
Yeah.
Because if exactly. Well, and there's also the thing too, if you see nothing but, this book's got 25-star reviews, your first thought is, oh, he has 20 friends wrote reviews for him. Whether that's true or not, there's a perception. So getting a 3-star or a 2-star or a 4-star, it doesn't bother me. I'm more impressed by the fact that someone took time to sit down, look up the page on Amazon, write the review. And that pleases me a lot, because that's someone took time. It's not like, it's not like they just went, oh, this sucks, and they just threw it down and never said anything else. They took time to go and put words down. And, so I figure the least I can do is say thank you for that.
Yeah. I work as a professional chef for my day job, and I learned a long time ago, you can't make everybody happy.
No.
And the same way with writing too. You just do the best you can. Like when I plate a dish and put it out, that's the best I can do. And I've had plates come back. And it's sort of like when you put your book out there. You're putting your book out for people. They're reading it, and they're giving that review. Of course, when you're a chef, you get reviews a lot quicker, and sometimes a lot more hastier than reviews.
Yeah. But I love the analogy, though. And actually, I did not know that you were a chef. That's quite awesome. But I love that too. Like, you can send stuff out, books, food, whatever. Doesn't mean it's bad. The person, it may just not be to their taste. I've certainly read books that are decent books, but I read it and go, man, this just wasn't for me. So I don't blame the author, because I don't like fantasy. Why did I pick up a fantasy book? And we've all seen where people leave reviews like that. I thought this book was going to be about this, and it's not. 1 star, so I try to, when I do reviews, I try to take that into account, that sometimes I'll pick up a book and try and go, this just wasn't for me. And so I won't, I try not to ding the author, because it's just wasn't for me,
Yeah, I've only gotten 1 3-star review. I think it was on Goodreads, and I was afraid to read it for about a month. And finally, I thought I better just take a look at it. I might learn something from it. And it was a glowing review. This is a great book. This is an awesome book. We really loved it. I'm like, what disease do I have to cure to get another star or 2 out of you? You're going on this rave about how wonderful I am. What? So,
and the review system's not, it's subjective. You know, I know friends that will never give a 5-star. It could be the best book they've ever read. The best you're going to get is 4 stars because no book deserves a 5-star. I know people that think that way. So yeah, so it's all subjective.
Maybe I
should
maybe I should look at them. If I get a swollen head.
That's my well, I also I do kind of like the fact that your wife does it for you. So someone's reading them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, but unfortunately, I'm like a one-man band here. So if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. So
I hear you. I hear you on that. And Bill Starton now would like to pose a question to all three of us, so he doesn't know that he's kicking at Pandora's box when he does that. If any of you had the opportunity to choose to write a book on a famous licensed property, what one would you want to do? Now, I know Bobby has done a couple of books with other people's IPs. So gentlemen, which one or two or more licensed properties would you like to write?
Gosh, this is so long.
Yeah. 2 days later.
I think I've got at least one good Star Trek novel in me. It would be I've written the little fan film thing, and that scratched the fan itch, But to do it for real, to do it as an actual, for the people that own Star Trek, I think I've got at least one good one in me. I certainly would love to write, comic characters into novels or into comics. I would write the Fantastic Four or Thor or Captain America all day long. So, but yeah, it's like Charles said, there's so many of them. It's hard to narrow it down to one.
Yeah. Charles, how about you?
I probably have a Star Trek novel in me too, but I think I would really like to write some Doctor Who.
That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not such a big fan of the new Doctor Who as I am the classic stuff, the John Pertwee, Tom Baker era. So that's the era I would like to write a novel in. I've got probably 1,000 stories in my head, and I've written a lot of fan fiction over the years. But yeah, that's something I'd like to be able to do professionally.
Yeah, you should keep an eye out for when Big Finish does the short trip submissions. They open it.
It's open now, and I've got mine ready to send tomorrow. So.
There you go.
Very good. Very good. I've been so busy on the project for you, Charles. I haven't worked on mine. So it's like the Cubs used to say, there's always next year. But for me and Doctor Who, I would like to write at least one book for all of them. Because I do enjoy all of them equally. And if they give me Peter Cushing, I'd take that one too. And I would also like to write Superman, but 1938 Superman. The guy is just discovering his powers. I think that would be incredible fun. And Sarah, her filter has a leak because of the folderol going on in the comments, and needs to listen more to what they're saying. Yes, Sarah, you're a budding author. This will help you, I promise. And Carl Weston says that's good advice to push yourself for your best product. Agreed, totally. And Michaela Jade says I still have 2 local bookstores that allow indies to sell their books. And let's see. Oh, here we go. David Atkins, who was on last week's Clever Title Pending, says indie music hit great from YouTube, but where are the best outlets for beginning writers to get noticed for their work? Do libraries help indie writers from what you found? Oh, yeah,
definitely. Yeah, the one here in our hometown of Athens, the library certainly does help. They actually have a thing every November where they have a bunch of indie authors come in and we have a round table, and we are able to sell our books and read chapters from our books. So yeah, they're big supporters here. I have all of my books are in the library, and actually right now they're on an end cap at one of the libraries, one of the branches. So
that's awesome. My local library, no. Other libraries around the state of Georgia, yes. I've also noticed in the last couple of years that libraries, in addition to other places, are getting into the convention type model of things, where libraries are doing 1 day indie author days or 1 day whatever they call it con, and so they're bringing they're having us come in. Like Charles said, we're selling books there. We're doing panels. We're introducing people who have never heard of us to our work, and I'm finding a lot of libraries are getting in on that, and those are fun. And they're usually fun 1 day events, so they're not as expensive for us to do because we don't have to do a hotel or all those type of things. So those are fun. I'm also finding that in addition to things like libraries and places where books are, at the foremost of what they do, I'm finding restaurants and bars are getting into indie author nights. There's a thing I've done, and I've done this in I've done this in 3 different states now. There's a thing called like Books and Beers or Books and Brews or something like that, and it's usually held during the week on a slower night at the bar. Most bars have a secondary room, and some restaurants have a secondary room for, when people want to reserve a room for a group, and they'll set that aside on like a Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. Hopefully we're bringing people in, so the bar makes a little money. We come in, we do a little interview, we read a little from our books or whatever, sell a few books. Sometimes the restaurant or the bar will take a cut. But it's a new audience. It's a way to reach a new audience. And I have found those to be quite fun and quite entertaining to do because it's different. It's a little different atmosphere than being at a convention in a convention center. So I'm really enjoying those. And so I'm finding more places getting into that and using indie authors because we're local and it's easier to get us, and they're a lot of fun. I've done several over the last couple of years, and hopefully we'll do more if we ever, start doing stuff again.
Yeah, there's a small town near me where they have what they call Final Friday, and they have a street thing every Final Friday of every month, and I've set up there with my books, and they have a lot of indie creators, artists come and set up. So street fairs are another thing to keep an eye on for especially new writers who don't know how to approach someone. A lot of these places are asking for independent writers to come to them.
One of the most interesting ones I did last year, there was a high school, Norcross High School here in Norcross, Georgia, had a thing where their mascot is the tiger, so they called it TigerCon. And it was a 1 day, it was on a Friday. And we actually came in during school hours. So the first 3 hours of the day, they actually brought classes in to meet all of us. And there were a bunch of people, because I heard this a lot. It's like, wait, they pay people to do this stuff? There was a lot of that where a lot of these kids wanted to write, wanted to draw, but didn't know how to, didn't know it was a job. And so that was fun. So we did it during the day for the school kids. But then after school was over, it opened to the public, and some of the parents of the kids came to see what was going on and check it out. So I'm loving the fact that other places are getting into the notion of inviting us in, seeing what we do, seeing value in us as guests at events.
Very good. Very good. And Meredith is paying attention to us. That's good. Carl Witzman says, yes, the local shops will give you space, but you are still paying them to display the books. Less money for you if that's important to you. Of course, being independent publishers, money is nothing to us, of course. Roll my ass on
I don't have any money, so yeah, it's not important.
Wait, money doing this?
I heard that rumor.
Yeah. You're coming up to a dry creek of information here, I'm afraid. So anyway, yeah. David Atkins further asks, let's filter bad ideas of marketing. What are the worst ways and places to market? Flyers, flea malls? Wow.
I never would say don't try it if you think it'll work. Mm-hmm. I have a cousin who worked for a company that helped a lot of people that were like they were training people that had lost their jobs, and they were doing an event where it was like a yard sale type event out of their warehouse, or like a warehouse sale. And she invited me to come up and set up and sell books. Now, I went in going, I am not going to sell anything, but I did it, because you get invited, you try it once. And yes, I didn't really do well, but it is interesting that you learn a lot of why it didn't go well. These are not people that were there to spend money. It's like some of these little town festivals where they do the autumn festival or the fall festival or whatever. I've done a few of those locally, and I realize that the people that come to those aren't there to buy things that cost more than $1 or $2. So, but I tried it, and I learned that from firsthand experience, and so I know not to do it again because it's not the right marketing venue for me. However, the lady sitting next to me that was making bracelets with beads, and she cleared a few $100. So you learn your audience from doing these things.
Yeah, because I've done some author expo. I set up with a bunch of authors, and I didn't sell anything. Maybe 1 or 2 books if I was lucky. But if I set up at comic book shows, 1-day events or 2-day events, because I write a lot of stuff that's kind of comic book related, I usually do really well with those. I did Kokomo Con last year, and I walked away with a smile on my face. But I did the Dayton Book Expo, and I cried all the way home. You gotta, like you said earlier, Bobby, you've got to find your audience and know where they're going to be, and that's where my audience is. They want to read, they want to read Captain Hawkland, and they want to read, some of my other adventure stuff. And I've got a superhero book that I've written, and that's, to me, the best place to go is find what you write, find out where your potential readers are, and go there. And don't waste your time at an author expo.
Right, because
there are a lot of authors that do really well author expos, but it just doesn't work for me.
Right. Yeah, because then again too, if there's 100 authors there, and people are there just looking for authors, it's a good bet they're going to hit the big name guys first. And by the time they filter down to you, they're out of money. Whereas I do a lot of comic shows as well, and a lot of times I see people walk by and go, "Ooh, novels," because it's an oddity there. And that sometimes works. Another one I found that's really good for selling books are the smaller science fiction shows, which is weird because I don't write a lot of science fiction, but science fiction fans tend to be readers, and not just readers of science fiction. And so I tend to do pretty well at sci-fi shows. But it's something I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't have done it. Right. So yeah, I'm not opposed to trying things.
Yeah, at least try something if you've never done it at least once. If it works, great. If it doesn't, go on to something else.
Right. You see, you still get the experience. There's an experience that, even if it doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in my own case, like what I do, the shows I do now are different than the shows I did when I started out. But like you guys said, I had to figure out which shows worked for me, what I had to do to make those shows work. I do pretty well at mall shows. Some of my best shows are malls, because people do mostly go to spend, and you get a wide cross section of people that way. So
if
some of my favorites.
If you're lucky at a mall show, you get close to the bookstore. People are going to the bookstore to buy books. If you're close to it. And every time I've done a mall show, I'll say, "Is there a bookstore nearby?" Because that's where I want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Now, Michaela Jade has Rick Bradley. I'm skipping your question because it was very similar to the one we had earlier on IPs. But we love you anyway. You've come up with some good ones. You're expected to come up with more. Michaela Jade, serious question. How much time do you devote to learning and honing your craft? I think that's an excellent question.
Wow, 100%. Every time I sit down at the keyboard, I'm being a better writer at that moment than I was yesterday. And the old adage is read a lot, and it's true, read a lot. But what helps me is audiobooks. I'm more of a audio visual kind of guy. If I listen to an audiobook, I learn a lot of things about writing that I never discovered before. And that's one of the things that helps me hone my skill. And when I sit back down at the typewriter and start writing, I take those ideas. And sometimes if I'm listening to an audiobook, I'll write down some of the things just to give me ideas, not plagiarizing, copywriting, or taking what they've written, but using it to hone who I am and how I write.
Yeah, it's what's the old joke? If you're as a writer, you're either writing or thinking about writing.
Yeah.
While you're not writing. Because you know what the yeah.
How many of us has woke up in the middle of the night with an idea that you can't get out of your head? You've got to go write it down before you can go back to sleep.
Oh yeah. I've learned the art of writing on one of these.
Yeah.
You wake up in the middle of the night, or you're not home, or sometimes I do extra. Yeah, sometimes I do extra work where I'm sitting in a holding tent, or something like that. We're waiting to work, and I can write on my phone while I'm sitting there because it's hard to carry the pad and paper in some of those areas. And so we're always. I think we're always thinking about it. I tend to work scenes in my head long before I write them down. So I can be driving down the road and it's in my head going, or things like that. So, I don't think about it as like, I got to sit down and practice my writing. It's like, I just got to write, and I guess what is it you learn by doing? And so I learn a lot by doing it.
That's true. And Sarah, I didn't have time to prepare either of these gentlemen's books to lick. Bobby, if you've missed this unfortunate thing I've started, you're a better man for it.
And here I thought I was going to get to see it. So I have to hold one up to the screen before we're done.
Yeah. Just put up there. Just like.
Yeah.
So you're welcome, guys. This copy of Santa's Time, $5 extra, and it's dry. Okay.
Right, because now you're also purchasing the DNA of Brian K. Morris.
That's right. So get those home cloning kits out, kids, and get busy. It's your next 4-H science project. David Atkins asks. David asks, political, religious, and controversial books seem to be a major trend, but is Nash, and should trends be catered or not, and should blogs help writers? There's a lot to drill down into. What do you think of following trends and especially controversy?
Following trends is never. I don't think it's a good idea because for two reasons. Depending on how fast you write and how fast you can get your book out there, the trend might be over before you get your book out. And then you're stuck putting out a book nobody's interested in because that trend is now passe. The other thing is, if you write to trends, say what's popular right now. Zombies. Say zombies are the thing right now, and so you sit down and you write a zombie book because you hate zombies, but it's the trend, and you want to make some money and cash in. So you write a zombie book. The book comes out. That book becomes popular. You are now the zombie writing guy who is going to be writing zombie books that you hate writing for the rest of your life. And it could happen that way, So I always tell people, write what you want, write what you would want to read. Or, if you can live with writing something you don't like for the cash, make sure you're getting paid well.
And I tend to stay away from controversy.
Yes.
I don't see any point into it. I try to, and I write, like the Captain Auckland series is set in the 1930s. There was a lot of controversy then, and I might touch on it a little bit, but I don't dwell into it because that just weighs your story down.
Mm-hmm.
David, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, you can write controversial books, but why would you want to? But and as far as it comes with the blogging, I never have time to write my blog. So I get
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I tend to avoid. Sometimes it makes its way into a story, but except for I did write one political thriller. The Domino Lady novel I wrote for Moonstone. They asked me to write a Domino Lady political thriller. So I had to have, but again, it's the 1930s. It was 1930s politics. It didn't really touch on what we're dealing with today. So, and this is kind of with my social media and everything too. I tend to keep a lot of that stuff out of it. That's not what I'm there for. My books, I write books to entertain. I don't write anything to be preachy, because if I ever feel like it's getting preachy, I usually cut that part, because that's just not what I'm there for. That's not, yes, I have opinions, but reading my book should not be me beating you over my head with, politics or religion or anything like that. It's just not what I do. It's not something I enjoy doing, so I don't.
Same here.
Very good. Yeah, ditto. Cindy Camp has a question. Indies and even small press published writers have to rely on a bunch of other experts. How do you sort the wheat from the chaff? Tell her don't listen to anyone in the Fez. And then after that. So when you are looking, that's okay. I didn't mean to bring down the show.
Yeah. Sorry. I was waiting on somebody else to go first. Sorry.
Go for it, Bobby.
I told you at the beginning I was going to follow you. So
I think a lot of it is gut reaction. Trust your instincts. Trust your gut. You're going to find people, and I'm sure the guys up here will, I say up here because on the screen, you're above me on the screen, but the guys here, I'm sure we've all done this where you've gotten advice, or even as the person is giving it to you, in your head is that little woman from that commercial going, that's not how this works. And it happens a lot. I do get, and I don't say that I don't think people are purposefully trying to give bad advice. I think a lot of people I get a lot of people, I have friends and family and things like this that don't really know anything about publishing. They just know I have books, and they'll come up and say, you know what you need to do? And it's usually something so obvious, or, it's like, you need reviews, well, how do I get those? I know I need them. What do I need more than that, so I think people try to help. So I don't think people are trying to give you bad advice. But I think a lot of it is just as you go and you learn what you're doing, you go, that just doesn't work for me. Or sometimes it's just like, I know that's wrong. Or, so you just kind of go, okay, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. I'll ignore them later,
My favorite thing is when someone who doesn't write books and doesn't do anything like what we're doing will come up to you and go, you know what? You should write a book about doctors.
Yes.
And it's like, okay. And then they start laying out this whole idea about the doctors and the nurses and all the things, political things that go on in a hospital. And I always say, well, why don't you write that story? Oh, I'm not a writer. You are. You take that idea and go write it. Okay, I'll write it.
My favorite is when I've got this thing. You should write a story about doctors. And you can we'll split the money 50-50.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so what are you bringing to it? Oh, you're going to write about doctors. Okay. So yeah, stuff like that. Or you at conventions, you guys have probably seen this too, where somebody comes and lays out their entire 10-book series to you. So that's when you go like, man, you're lucky I'm not like a thief,
Or you get people come up to you and go, so how much do you make a year on writing? Oh, Brian is gone.
We lost Brian.
We have control.
We have run Brian off his own show.
He wasn't talking much, so.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Yes.
What else do you have there, Bob?
Yeah. What else do we have? Well, hang on. I'm looking in through the comments to see if we can find another one here.
All right.
This is riveting television, isn't it, folks? I'm just going to grab the first one I see here. Okay. Meredith says it's not easy getting on a promotional social media circuit, but you have to be hungry enough to get out there. What in terms of social media, Charles, do you find helpful in terms of reaching an audience?
Well, one time it was Twitter. When I first started, Twitter was the thing. Now it's so convoluted with a lot of clicks, and you try to get in and talk to some of these other writers, but you just can't seem to get into it. So Facebook over the past couple years has really done a lot for me. I've created a couple pages, and I'm members of a couple pages, so I have a lot more interaction on Facebook. And Instagram helps too, but I think Facebook is, for me, the way to go anyway. What about you?
I like Facebook. Facebook is good for the interaction. It's good for getting people to like and share and, talk about, get a discussion going. Sometimes the actual promoting, I know, gets lost in the shuffle because of their weird algorithms and how that works. But I do like Facebook. I do like Instagram. I have tried to come up with interesting ways to share stuff on Instagram. So I've gotten really good at making like little small diagrams because you have to have some kind of image with Instagram. So I've gotten good at making those quickly and to fit the size. And so I've been able to do things like share excerpts or do that with images, and some text that has helped a lot.
One of the drawbacks about Instagram is you can't put live links.
Right.
And so you always have to say, you always have to put a hashtag link in the comments or something like that, or link in profile. So or put tiny URLs in your pictures so people can be typed. Right.
Now, speaking of hashtags, you mentioned hashtags. Do you find those helpful or useful?
I catch a lot of people liking me or becoming my friend or whatever they call it on Instagram, and I think the hashtags have a lot to do with it. I took a lot of time studying which hashtags were the most important for writers in the writer community and for readers, because I like to talk to other writers, but honestly, I want to contact more readers. Yeah, granted, a lot of writers do read, but there are a lot of people who read who don't write, and I want to write. So hashtags really help.
Yeah, and there's a lot of groups, especially with Instagram, that do that, like Bookstagram, or for writers, there's Am Writing, or I also did it for a couple of my books, like the snow books, like It's the Summer or The Summer of Snow.
Right.
Because man, it was hard coming up with an easy one for snow because there's a lot of snow hashtags out there. Things like that. I think it works, and finding those groups. There's a lot of finding reader groups that you can use those hashtags to.
Here's a message from Brian. It says, "Hang on, guys. Have a bit of internet trouble. I'm checking to see if it's just something local. Hold on, please." Hi, Meredith.
Hey guys, I'm just going to jump in real quick until he gets back. I don't know if you saw me. I'm in the background here, totally not prepared to be online with you guys, but I just wanted to carry the conversation forward until he gets in. Michaela Jade said, "I get disappointed when other authors tell me how things must be done because it worked for them, like their way or the highway. It just isn't so." Do you have any comments on that?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, like we mentioned earlier, we all have different end goals, end games, I've decided I want my books to go in this direction because this is the goal I want to do. That may be different than Charles has. Charles may want to go this way, it's so the way I do things may not work for Michaela because she may have a different, goal that she's trying to reach for. And going my way could take her in the opposite direction of that. So, but yes, I get that too from people. It's like, you must do it this way. And I'm like, no. I know so many people that did a different way. So you have to kind of trust your gut there.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, you got to find your niche. You got to follow your audience, and you have to do your best to to do what's right by you. And if you can help another writer along the way, and they've taken something you've learned and twisted it to where they want it, then I like it when people ask me questions. I like to give them my knowledge of what I can, and I also like to reach out to other writers who have a little bit more experience than me in some aspects, and get their advice so I can turn it for myself.
Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
and what kind of advice would you give to authors who are out there who are afraid to speak up against that, against maybe bad advice, to go against their gut, maybe?
You have to stick up for yourself. And then there's a lot of people who are writers who are introverts. I'm sort of an introvert, and I have a hard time speaking up for myself. Sometimes I just agree, nod my head, but you've got to get to the point that this is your business. You're trying to build. You're trying to build yourself as that business.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing to do is you just have to look them in the eye and say, look, this works for you, but I'm going to try it this way and see if it works for me. Thank you for your advice.
Yes. No, he's
and
absolutely,
like a dealer at the casino. Dealer at the casino, I'm going to show my hands here, and Brian is back.
Thank you.
Brian, get in here. Thank you, guys.
So he's
We
don't like dead air, Brian. Get in here.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Thank you, Meredith. Meredith is my own personal backside saver. She has done this on more than one occasion. Thank you, Meredith. And everyone, please check out the Comic Noob on Friday afternoons on Geek Insider and various other places. Thank you, Meredith. I love you. Yes, our local internet blanked for a minute.
Our coup is over.
Bye.
Oh, we lose him again.
Hey, did he leave us?
There he is.
I know when the troops are rallying against me to get the hell out of Dodge.
We couldn't do it without our fearless leader.
That was her. That was her.
I know.
Oh, yeah, you probably didn't even care I was gone. I understand. I mean, we got an upgrade in host just now, but anyway.
we filled the time.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. So that's why people wonder about the unpredictable nature of this show, mostly because I can't rely on my internet. So anyway, thank you guys for saying. I do appreciate it. Let's see, where did we leave off?
Well, we were just talking about how you deal with when people give you that bad advice that's wrong, and we just kind of covered that.
Oh, okay, that's
and
good.
And we talked about social media, and we talked about hashtags.
Wow, you get a lot done when I'm not here. Anyway, holy crap, I'm holding you back. Cindy Kemp, who has another great question. I hope these guys helped you. I know they're very helpful to me. What's the best advice you've gotten as a writer or a publisher, guys?
Definitely the one about that I mentioned earlier. It's like nobody's going to care as much about your book as you. So you need to learn how to promote your book, and you need to learn how to talk your book up. Because yes, when I first started, I was very much the shy, quiet introvert. I know that's hard for you guys to believe, but there was a time. There was a time at the beginning of my career that I would not have been able to do this. I like to tell this story. What helped me, I was taking night classes at the University of Georgia. They would have night classes, not the non-credit kind. And there was a class called, and I loved the title of this class, Murder and Mayhem for Fun and Profit. It was all about writing murder mysteries and thrillers. And I took the class, and I'm in the class where you come in and you read aloud to the class and the teacher, and then you get that instant feedback from everyone. And I don't have a regular sized piece of paper in front of me, but this will do. And this is how I would read. I would hold a piece of paper in front of my face. and I would read. And that was how I would do it, because I could not do it with all those people looking at me. And there was a lady in the class named Sandra, and we became friends in the class, and she was a writer who wrote for fun. It was kind of a therapy thing for her a bit. And so she realized what I was doing, saw what I was doing, and she started sitting next to me. And so I'd be up there reading with the paper like this, and there'd be this hand come over and get my arm, push. So I had to learn. She wouldn't leave me alone, so I had to learn to look at people while I read, and that really helped a lot. And then after that, going to conventions, being up on panels or at con tables, you've got to be able to talk to people, or you're never going to sell a book. And so, so that's a good skill to learn, how to get out there and talk to people. And you can't be embarrassed by your book. You can't just, I wrote a book, and it's okay. That's not going to convince anybody.
Right.
You don't want to be super egotistical, but you've still got to sell it. So
the best advice I ever got was, and I've used this phrase a lot, is you can only be the best writer you are today. Tomorrow you'll be even better.
Yeah.
And that's something I've always taken to heart. But I'm like you. I remember when I did my first talk at a convention, and I was shaking in my shoes because I was standing up in front of about 35 people who were in the room to have me talk to them about independent publishing. And I thought I was going to pass out. And if it wasn't for my wife sitting there in the front row, smiling at me and shaking her head, I wouldn't have made it. And from that point forward, I told myself, I've got to make myself do things that I'm not used to. So get out of your comfort zone, get out of your box, and be somebody different. And Brian, you've said it a few times. When you're doing shows, you're performing for people. Mm-hmm. We're not seeing the Brian K. Morris that I have seen going to dinner with. We see a different Brian K. Morris. And that's, ever since I heard you say that, that's how I do it. I'm somebody else behind that table. I have to be. I can't be myself, or I would be sitting in a chair and not saying a word. So,
you kind of have to. You have to put on that author hat. Yeah, that it's or that author mask. You got to
be. You've got to go in. You're performing for people. You want people to buy your books. You need to be as likable as you can. Some people, it comes natural. I've got a friend named Lawrence who can talk to anybody. He can walk up to a perfect stranger and act like he's known him all of his life. I can't do that. So I have to be someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, and there's degrees of it too. The first time I was on a panel with other indie guys, I was nervous, but I was like, these are my people, Then one year, DragonCon decides to put me on here with big famous writers. And I'm like, okay. So I introduced myself. I was the last one to introduce myself. And I'm like, I'm the who's he of the panel, because all these guys are working on writing Superman and Spider-Man. And I'm writing my little indie comic over here that you've never heard of. So then having who you're with makes a big difference. The first time you're on a panel with celebrities, that it can, then you feel about that tall. So, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. And, yes, like being on this with celebrity Brian K. Morris, it's
no, this is the home of imposter syndrome, Bobby. We understand.
And I started watching Brian's show about 2.5 years ago. And if it wasn't for me actually finding this show and finding his day show and listening to him and making a friendship with him, I wouldn't have gone as far as I have now. There's your segue.
Thank you.
So he helps out, and I try to emulate what he does. The rising tide raises all ships. And I try to live up to that too and it's all because of Brian. I know I might be just a little bit, but I really think that you are what helped me get to where I am. I couldn't have done this show 2.5 years ago. There's no way.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. Well, that's okay. 2.5 years ago, I wasn't doing it quite this way either. So I still look at those old videos and I'm like, oh God,
We've both grown, and that's what a new writer needs to do. You need to get out of your comfort zone, and do things you're not used to. And the next thing you know, you're going to be selling books, you're going to be shaking hands, you're going to be meeting people, and the next thing you're going to know is you go, how did I get to this point?
Yeah, right. When you do conventions, it's the same thing as this. You're going to see the same people a lot. Get to know them. Introduce yourself. Introduce, if nothing else, introduce yourself to your table mates. Because usually at a con, you're an artist alley. You've got a table on either side of you. Say hello. But, we in our industry, especially in the indie end of our industry, we look out for each other. It's not all like, we've all done conventions, it's like you're watching your table, your neighbor's table while they run to the bathroom or to get something to eat, and they do it for you. Or you get to know people and you guys do dinner together, or, we're not like going like, oh my God, you guys are my competition. We're all like, we're all writers. And I find a lot like when writers are like, one of us will see an opportunity for something. Someone's looking for a certain type of story. You know what? It may not be my type of story, but I bet I know who would like, and I can send people. Or when you do interviews at places, hey, they're looking for more people to interview. Let me tell people I know that would be a good fit to do this. So we're not just looking out for ourselves. I think we're all doing things together, and sometimes it even leads to us working together. Charles and I are working on a thing now for his new magazine. So that's been fun. We're, different things like that happen. Sometimes sometimes projects get started at conventions during those slow moments when you're talking to your neighbor and you both realize, I'm talking to this artist next to me and we both have an interest in, this type of story. Hey, let's write that. And you build, things happen that way. So getting out and being part of the community will help you. And the more you do it, as you said earlier, the more you do it, the easier it gets to do. And then you eventually get to where I'm at now, where people are like, will he ever shut up?
Let's hope not. And Bobby is definitely rising tide himself, because he's given me a couple of interview opportunities also. So hats off to you, sir.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't gain me anything doing that. Right. But but what's the thing? It's nice to be nice. Yeah. Why not help your fellow creator? You may find down the road they offer something that helps you. You don't go into it thinking that, but you're right. The rising tide lifting all boats is an absolutely true adage in the indie market.
Yeah, especially in books, I'm finding. I've seen other independent markets, like art and, comics and things like that. And I think novel and prose is probably the most generous one of all of them. I don't mean to diss any of the others, but I say, because I've met very few people that have been like selfish with information, selfish with help sort of thing, but, kudos to everyone here.
And there's more to, like, if you want to work with other people and work, because I'm what they call a hybrid. I do my own stuff, but I work for publishers as well. And so we talked earlier about branding and putting on the mask and whatever. You're selling yourself as much as you're selling what you write. Excuse me. Charles is selling Captain Hawkland, but Charles is also selling Charles. And you build a reputation to where, what? I know if I need somebody for this. I know if I ask Charles, he'll meet the deadline. That helps put you at the top of the list. I got a book once. I got offered a story in an anthology once, and they were doing open calls, and the publisher said, you're in. I mean, you still have a good story, but you're definitely in the cut. And I was like, how did I get to the top? He says, I know you'll promote the book. Yeah. So things like that, you get a reputation for doing things. someone asked me earlier today about doing a bunch of interviews, and I was like, well, I ask. It's usually the first thing, but I also promote them. I'm sure you've had guys on here before, Brian, that don't promote that they're going to be on the show. They don't promote it during or after, and
right.
And it's cool. It's not something you require of us to be here, but I want to hopefully bring people that are interested in me to your show.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's all that thing where we're helping each other without it being it's not a big deal, but it helps. Every little bit helps.
Mm-hmm.
It's a win-win. It's a win-win to be on a show like this, and to be on a show with people you respect
Mm-hmm.
and get along with, and I've had several people ask me. There's a writer in Columbus who writes a lot of things close to the snow stories, and asked if there was anybody else that wrote stories like that. And I said, well, yeah, Bobby Nash in Georgia writes the snow series. Check these out. And the Santastein book. I'm always pushing people towards that because it's an awesome, funny, hilarious read that you can't pass up. And that's what we need to do is build one another up,
Mm-hmm.
top one another, and help each other climb that pyramid, climbing over top of one another, but then reaching behind you and grabbing him and pulling the next person up. And
Absolutely.
that's what indie writing is all about. And if you're going to be an independent writer, you've got to get your mindset that that's what you're going to have to do. It's not only just about you. It's about everybody else that's trying to do what you're doing. Help people, and that'll help yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try at least 2 or 3 times a week. I was doing it every day for a while, and I do miss a day, but at least 3 times a week, I'm making a point to on social media promote something that's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I pick usually it's somebody I know, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'll just see something that looks so cool that I'll share it. And I just that's one of those things I like doing because it's that way my feed is not also full of just me begging people to buy stuff.
Yeah.
That's mine. So
definitely. Now, Cindy Kemp follows up this question with, what is the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Probably that right to trend stuff we talked about earlier. That you should. This is popular. You should write that. Or
write that soccer story.
Yeah.
I guess worst advice is getting advice from people who have never written a book.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst advice.
Yeah. Or dealing with people who have gotten their advice from people who've never written a book, but say they are experts. So you can't go and punch the guy that told them because you don't know who it is. David Atkins says, give some advice to writers about where to get their character development and how to build their characters during their journey. Do's and don'ts in character development.
Okay, I'll start. My stories always start with character. Character is the most important thing in terms of that. Where to get the characters? Everywhere. You see people every day. Now, you might not now. We're all in like semi-quarantine here, but in your daily life, you probably see people. And say I'm creating. This is where I learned it in my novel Evil Ways, my first published novel Evil Ways. There's 2 brothers that are the main protagonists. And so I wrote this scene and I read it in that class I mentioned earlier. And the feedback I got was like, these guys don't feel like brothers to me. The only reason I know they're brothers is you say they're brothers, but they don't feel like brothers. And so I took that to heart and I was like, wait, I have a brother. How do my brother and I talk and interact with each other? And so what I did was I gave one of the characters his personality and one of the characters my personality. And they argued a lot more, but they felt real. So when I went back and reread that the next week with the changes I had made, the feedback I got was now they feel like brothers. And so when you're writing a character, if you need an authority figure character, you probably have an authority figure in your life that you can loosely base them on to get you started. You don't copy that person. I mean, you can, but I mean, you use that as a starting point. This guy is this, and then we build on to that character. And then the characters become real to you. I know I meet a lot of people that you have heard the cliches that the characters will tell you what they will and won't do. And everybody thinks it's funny that we don't, we say that, but it's absolutely true. Once the character becomes real to me, Snow will react to a plot point differently than Lance Starr will react to the same plot point. Therefore, your story goes in two different directions because those characters do things differently. So once you know your character, it informs your plot, because plots are pretty simple. I mean, there's only a handful of basic plots out there. It's how your character reacts to the plot that makes the reader involved. How many times have you read a book or watched a TV show and this one's not so good. This book or this episode are not so good, but I still enjoy it because I love the characters. So you love the character, you stick around, even though that was not a good story. That one didn't do anything for me, but you still love the character. And so your characters will then grow through those stories and make, that's what people fall in love with and keep coming back for in the series. They want to see what hell I've put Snow through in the next book.
True.
It's kind of hard to follow that. I think you touched on it.
That's why I tried to let you go first.
That's fine. From strong characters, you get your story. If, like you said, I base a lot of my characters on people I've either known growing up or I know now. There used to be a little old lady that lived next door to us. Well, she wasn't all that little old lady, but at 6 years old she was. And her name was Wanda Vandenberg, and she was an evil, spiteful woman. So I created characters based on the way she acted because she's very real to me, which made my characters very real when I wrote them. So that's what you have to do with your story. You have to. I like to people watch. When you go out in the crowds and you watch people, and I catch myself staring at someone, and they'll give you that look like, well, take a picture, it'll last longer kind of thing. But I'm studying them because I take those mannerisms and I put them in my story.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, little things like that work. Yeah, mannerisms. Like I have characters that do what I'm doing right now with my hand on their chin when they're thinking. I
like this.
Yeah, or when things are going bad, they're doing the old Captain Kirk thing where he's rubbing his chin. Those are things you give it to certain characters. You give them those traits, or yeah. So, and then all that, and then they grow as the story goes. I mean, I have been writing stuff and have just as it flows out of you, have a character say something that's really odd, but you realize it makes a lot of sense because of who the character is. And it also helps you keep the character straight, because if you write something that's out of character, it'll feel wrong to you and it'll feel wrong to the reader. So once you get to know them, they feel like real people to you. I'm sure Captain Hawkland is a real guy in your head.
Yeah. He's also an action figure now.
Action figure, yeah.
Yeah.
I am so envious of that, by the way.
Well, Bobby, not to make you jealous, brother, but
I don't have anything. I have no action figures. Jeez. I have been slacking on the job. The closest thing I have, a few years ago, a friend of mine, and it's not anywhere I can get to it close. A friend of mine knitted a Lance Starr style, aviator hat out of just knitted it out of wool. So I have that, but I only have one, so it's not like I can get them out there. But it's really cool.
That is awesome, though. That is very cool.
Bobby, I have a question for Bobby, real quick.
Okay.
When you're writing your character and the character does something that go out of character, what do you do?
The first thing I do is find out why. I go back and read it, and it's like, is it really out of character, or are we revealing something I didn't know yet? Because sometimes that happens. One thing makes a character act differently. If I trust the character and see where it goes, that may require the other characters noticing it. You know, why is Snow acting so weird about this? And then and then we may find in the course of the story that there's something his friends didn't know about that happened that this kind of sparks. And so it throws him off his game, or, you know, because we all in real life, we have that where we're just, you know, go through these periods. We're just like, man, I'm irritable for like a week, you know, don't know why, just something set him off. And so if it works for the story, I'll see where it goes. If it doesn't, then I have to kind of find a way to shoehorn them back to where they need to be. But I find when I do that, when I make the round peg fit the square hole, the story is not as good. It turns out not to be as good. So I really try to trust them and see how I get to where I'm going. And certainly it's happened many times. I have many examples of stories where I had a plan, you know, I got to get from here to here. And about halfway through, the characters derailed that plan.
Yeah.
But it made the story better, you know. Yes, the first series of Snow was supposed to tell a big story over 6 individual stories. And so I knew this was going to happen in book 6. Something happens in book 3 that wipes out my plans for 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I had to readjust, but the story became better because a character who was not as important in the early stories, I realized is more important to the rest of the story. Character I'd not planned this out ahead, but in the course of telling that story, that character became so important and real that the character, and I'm trying to not do pronouns for people that haven't read that far. The person that character would not let me write them out of the story. They wanted to be part of it. They're like, no, this is important. I have to be here for this. And then you end up trusting that made the story better for me. And threw a curveball to the people that have read that 3rd book going, wait a minute, you know, and so, which is also good because, you know, that gets them to go, I've got to come back for book 4 to find out what's going on. So, yeah, so I try to trust them. And so for the most part, they haven't let me down yet.
That's good. That's cool. My evil Lynn T.L. Shively has a question. Have any reviews helped you with your writing?
If I read reviews,
okay, that's a no from Charles.
You know, I want to say, because there are, I mean, when you read the ones that say, I like this, because a lot of times you get review, there's different types of reviews. Sometimes you get the review that goes, this is a good book, I liked it. Okay, that great. I love that review, but I can't do anything with that and how to, you know, improve what I'm doing. But I love I had one review that was like, this isn't really the genre that I like, but I love the family dynamic in the Snow books. All right, that's something that's really cool. The family dynamic. It's because, and that seems to be hitting with a lot of people because the grandfather, Archer, has become the favorite character. I have more people talk about they love him. You know, like I could probably kill off Snow and let his grandfather take over and people would be happy. Yes, there's a contingent of the readers that would love that. So, but it also tells me people love that character. Let's make sure he's there. You don't want to overuse him, but you want to make sure he's front and center occasionally.
I've had people verbally tell me what they like about my books, and I use that for help. Like for my book Absolution, I wrote a robot character named Revo, and evidently he is such. A lot of readers liked Revo that when I do write the next book, he's going to get a bigger part in it. And they help me. They help me with flushing out that character. I had a couple of people come up and said, wouldn't it be neat if Revo could do this or if Revo could do that? So I write things like this. So I guess I don't read my reviews, but when someone comes up and tells me about my books, and that helps me structure the story. And I think probably my biggest critic is probably my wife, because she's also my editor. And she has helped me really flesh out the Captain Hawkland series and built him. I've even used the terminology in the book that he's he's got a high moral compass. And when I was writing his second book, I wasn't writing him like that. She got really upset because she goes, "You need to set Captain Hockland to a higher standard than everyone else." So she helped me develop that character in that direction. So verbally, I've gotten a lot of response from people that's helped.
That's also good stuff to do when you're working with other people. Like right now, I'm writing. I guess it's okay. Is it okay to say what I'm writing for your magazine?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm doing a Lance Star Sky Ranger meets Captain Hockland team up. So I'm writing Captain Hockland, and so the Bible and the character sheet that Charles sent me on who Captain Hockland is, that information helps me too. I mean, reading the books, you get a lot of it too, but you get that distilled information because if you look at it from 30,000 feet, Lance Star and Captain Hockland are a lot alike. They're both pilots. They're both like hero guys. They're pulp guys. They both build and design and build airplanes, and they have adventures. So from 30,000 feet, they're similar archetypes. But when you start getting down to those characters are as unique as night and day. So knowing all that and using what he's already done for his character, what I've already done for my character, when I put them together, seeing how they interact is interesting because
heads, don't they?
They do a little bit, yes. At the first, when they first see each other, there's a bit of that. What the hell are you doing here? This is my thing. Get at, because they're both also the alpha male. They are the boss, and so when you got two bosses together, you're going to get that. Yeah, you're going to get the. And so, but it's fun to write. But because Charles knows his character so well, he's able to give me the stuff I need to know, in there. And like when I do that with other people writing my characters, we put out the stuff that they need to know to get the essence of who that character is. So
I'm sitting here with two other writers. There's three of us that are in a certain little club together because all three of us have written Captain Hockland stories.
Mm-hmm.
I created the character. You've done the team up, and Brian is writing one also for the Pulp magazine coming out.
Very nice.
Thank you.
We're an exclusive club.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I remember attended tonight.
I'm not often in an exclusive club, so that's pretty interesting. So,
but exclusive clubs.
Yeah, but it is.
My wife made it.
Yeah,
myself, so.
Yeah, it is fun. I know we got the question earlier about licensed characters. There is something fun about playing with someone else's toys. Mm-hmm. Now I think a lot of people too, because obviously if you've been at a convention or you've been around readers or writers or fans of things, well, if I was writing it, we would do this, and that's not always the case because when you accept a assignment writing a character that's not yours, you don't get to break the toys. You just get to play with them. They have to be in the same condition when you finish that you find them in. Sean Taylor told me this once, and I think he heard it from someone else, and I'm blanking on who, so I'm sorry about that. But he said I was writing a story for Sean for an anthology, and in the Bible, the last line was, "And remember, don't blow up Cleveland. We might need that later." That was his way of saying that, they still live in the real world. You can't, in your story, blow up Cleveland because Cleveland still exists. And it's just like, if you write a Star Trek story, you can't kill Spock unless you can find a way for Spock to be alive at the end of the story. Same kind of thing. And so, but there's a lot of, now on this indie thing, like with writing Captain Hockland, there haven't been a lot of, you didn't put a lot of restrictions on me, which was nice. But sometimes when you write other characters, like I've written the Green Hornet, and it had quite a few restrictions. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't tell this story. There was a lot of that. But that's the name of the game. You know that going in, that you have to write within the restrictions of the people that own the character. Now, that's just like in this story, I wouldn't cut off Captain Hawkland's arm, because that might screw Charles' next story up,
Yeah.
He might need that later.
Yeah, he might need
Yeah,
that
might
later.
later.
So you have to write, because you want characters to grow, but it's in this story I'm writing, it's not my job to like make a life altering decision for Charles's character. That would be bad form for me to do that. It'd be like, yeah, I'll write Captain Hawkland and Lance Starr, and we'll kill off Captain Hawkland. That'll be fun. I'm sure that would not go over well. So yeah, so you have to go into it knowing what kind of story you can tell, and just I can't break these toys. These are my neighbor's toys. I've got to play with them, be respectful, put them back when they're done. And so, yeah, so that's a fun thing of writing other people's, because also,
if you break their toys, you won't be asked over anymore.
Exactly, exactly, there is a lot of fun with playing with other people's characters. You can have a lot of fun doing that. I'm having fun with Captain Hawkland. I loved writing, Green Hornet. That was a lot of fun. Or Domino Lady, which I did not create. Or doing when we did the Edgar Rice Burroughs adaptation. It was fun to play in those. Those areas I was familiar with. But yeah, you can't. You got to be really careful about what you do with other people's characters.
That's true. Yeah, I know. I've been feeling the pressure too. So, of course, then again, Charles is writing one of mine, Doc Saga, and he's been giving me some excellent questions. I'm like, oh wait, I never thought of that. I better define that for him. So, but it is good to know the parameters when you are playing with somebody else's toys, so to speak.
Yeah,
I like that. And Doc Saga is so new that we're actually building that character. You and I and the other writers who are involved. Mm-hmm. We're structuring this character for future stories that's going to come along, and I think we're actually setting the precedent. I mean, you created the character, you set the guidelines, and as a writer, I how far I could push that boundary without saying, you know what, Charles, we can't do that. So I hope that when you read the story, I push him just enough, but keep it within your guidelines. Because I want to play in your sandbox again with that character. So
yeah. Well, I'm enjoying it so far. So I'm optimistic and uncautiously at that.
Yeah.
So
because there are certain things you can do to a character that, since we're all Doctor Who fans, you'll understand. There are fixed points in time. If your character has a child, you suddenly have stories that take place before the child was born and stories that take place after. So it becomes a very delineated point in time. The people that own the character should be the one making those decisions and when to do that. As the guy coming in to just play, it's not my job to, give Captain Hawkland an offspring. It's not my job to do that. And so, but that's one of the things too that we learned just from doing the job. We know it's one of the, you trust your gut things. We kind of know better.
Yeah. Very good. Now, Meredith Logren, my personal last saver, has a question for you guys. Is there anyone in your past in real life that you can attribute your love of writing to, a teacher or a friend?
I had a English teacher in high school that when I was younger, I didn't do very well in school. And comic books contributed to me reading better and becoming a better writer because of that. And it was because of that teacher who helped me define who I was as a writer. He gave me a lot of advice. The whole idea between the difference between plot and story was him sitting me down and saying, hey, you can have a plot. Your story has to fill in the holes of that plot. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have caught on to that whole idea, I don't think. So he was probably one of the first people that set me in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, I have two that spring to mind from when I was a teenager. I I was my goal was to be a comic book artist, not to be a writer. But I started writing things to draw. And in school, same thing. I was in school and I would sit and I'd have the one page out for taking notes, and then I would be drawing comics on another page. And I remember there was an English teacher. Her name was Wilma Clark. Miss Clark caught me drawing in class one day, and yeah, I got caught drawing in class all the time. And they're like, "Put that away," and she goes, "Wow, that's really good. As long as you're taking care of this, keep doing it. That's really good. I like what you're doing." She goes, "By the way, have you ever considered?" She was also in charge of the newspaper. "Have you ever considered writing or drawing for the newspaper? Give you some focus on how to do things." And so I took her up on that the next year when we signed up for classes. And I learned a lot. And back in those days, that was Paste Up and, that was back in pre-internet days, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And but the skills that I learned from doing all that, from her catching me drawing in class, are skills I still use today, only with a computer. So that was one.
Cut and paste.
All you need now is a little rubber cement and you're good to go.
Exactly.
And so I learned a lot of skills, like I said, that I still use today, only I use them with a computer. So, and cut forward to like a year or two after high school. And so I was maybe 18, 19, 20, and I'm writing and drawing comics, and I'm not having any success finding any publishers that are interested in anything I do. And to be honest, I knew my artwork was not really up to snuff. And I had an artist friend of mine that actually set me down and says, "Look, I have something to tell you you're not going to want to hear." And I guess it was just the right day for me to hear it, because he goes, "You're writing and you're drawing, and your writing's pretty good. Your drawing it's not professional level, but your writing is not bad." And he goes, and I goes, "Well, I'm not a writer." And he goes, "Well, you're writing this stuff, and this stuff is actually pretty good. I think if you were to focus on just the writing, you would do better." And it's one of those things, because if he'd have told me that a week before, I'd have probably got pissed off, and but it was the right time, because it penetrated. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, he might be right, because I am splitting my focus, so I'm rushing through everything. And so, as hard as it was to set the drawing aside, I focused on just writing comic scripts at the time. This was before I'd ever even thought of, let me write a novel. And so I started focusing on it. And 2 years later, I sold my first professional comic script. So there was something to that advice, that had I not focused on the one, I might never have got there. Because I was always pitching things as, I'm going to write it and pencil it. And a lot of times they may like the story, but man, your art sucks. And, so that advice helped me a lot. So those two people were very, very instrumental in I think, helping me get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Real fast, Bobby, then Charles, what was your very first published work?
I worked on some like local stuff that wasn't professional, where just people are stapling stuff together. So I don't really count that, even though it was kind of out there. In 1992, I did some work on a comic book where I was lettering it and touching up art with some friends. It was their book, and so I worked on that. But also that same year in 1992, the local newspaper here in town started a monthly family-oriented kids and family-oriented magazine that was a supplement to the newspaper once a month. And I had met the editor. I had met her because my dad and I were leading a Boy Scout troop, because my brother was in the Boy Scouts, and they didn't have anybody, so my dad and I were doing that. And so I had met her through that, talking about the Boy Scout events we were doing. And somehow in the course of it, she found out that I wrote and drew, and And she hired me. So I did comic strips, one panel gag strips that I wrote and drew that ran once a month for 12 years. So that was my first like real deadline oriented. You got to get it in. Here's the gig, do it. And that was in 1992. I did that for 12 years. There wasn't much else in that 12 years because my first quote unquote professional comic book script was in 2000. So yeah, so there was a good 8 years of that was about all I was doing. And but yeah, so that was good. And then my novel I wrote Evil Ways sometime in the 90s, and I didn't sell it until 2004. And it came out in 2005, and I've been pretty busy since then.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, excellent. Charles, what was your first?
Well, it's not really professional, I guess, but I went to high school in the middle of a cornfield. There was cornfields outside, and there were soybeans outside on the other side of the school. And there was a bunch of us who were, back in 1982, 83, something like today, being a geek wasn't widely accepted. So we had our own group. So we did our own fanzine, only we created our own characters for it. And the teacher let us go into the office and print it off and everything, and we would distribute it through the school. So I was allowed to write 3 pages in each issue we were going to put out. And I created a character named Diamond Jack. And precursor to Captain Hawk a little bit, only he was kind of more of a scoundrel card player kind of character. So we did 6 issues of that during our senior year of high school. So that was really kind of my first publishing thing. And I was really proud of that. I bet you if I look around and dig, I could probably find 2 or 3 of those little pamphlets floating around here. But my first independent published thing was a book called The Dark Frontier Saga, Keepers of the Past. And that was the first thing I published in 1999. And thankfully, it's out of publication now because it's the ideal is sound, the writing is horrible. I hope to one day revisit those characters and rewrite that book. But that was the first thing I did in 1990, and I haven't looked back. I've just kept pushing forward.
Very cool. Very cool. Rick Bradley would like to know. Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby.
No, I was going to say that was pretty cool. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. That is awesome. Rick Bradley asks, which ebook distributor do you think is the easiest to use?
Amazon and Kindle.
Yeah, that's who I use. I did enjoy Smashwords. I used Smashwords for a while too, but as an indie creator, as a business decision, doing the KDP select where I'm only doing it through them is a smarter business decision. Yeah. Because of the money and their higher royalty if you do it that way. Mm-hmm. Because 99.9% of my sales were through Amazon anyway.
Yep.
And you hate to miss that 1 or 2 sales, but just as a business decision, that was my choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I tried to do it through the Barnes and Noble e-reader. I tried to do it with that and do it on Amazon, but then I thought I'm cutting my risks not being part of KDP. I get better royalty. I get the page reads. I get better. People know Amazon. People go to Amazon for everything. Why would I go to something else? I've had people tell me do Smashwords. I've had books on Smashwords, but I don't sell anything on there. All of my sales come through Amazon, and that's where I'm going to stay. Yeah, a lot of people aren't crazy about Amazon. It's not a lot of people's favorite places, but I make money from it, so I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me.
Yeah, I have some bookstores that refuse to carry any of my stuff because they consider Amazon competition. I shouldn't, But these are also bookstores that weren't going to stock my book anyway. So, yeah. But they're, Charles also mentioned the KDP Select where people can read your book for free on Kindle Unlimited. as an author that's, I'm not famous. Most of the people that I meet at cons and whatnot, they don't know who I am. Having that, if you have already subscribed to this, you can read my work for free is a great way to get people to take a chance on reading something. Now, granted, I still get paid, not as much as if they had buy the book, but there is still money coming in. And so I do love that that's an alternate revenue stream for us and allows us to get people to sample our books who might not. I don't want to pay $2.99 for the ebook, but I'll read it for free and see if I like it. So
there you go. There you go. And Meredith further asks, how do you hammer through writer's block?
Go ahead.
I tend to, if I hit a snag in a story, I've actually walked away from stories for a long time because I couldn't finish it. But I tend to get up and go for a walk. I just get away from it. Well, I try to force something that's not coming. I know if I go for a walk, if I go for a drive in the car, if I do something else, what I need to figure out in my story comes to me. And 90% of the time, 99% of the time, if I'm doing something else because I've had a problem with a story I'm writing, it comes to me just out of the blue. And usually when I'm driving the car, so my wife's writing down everything I'm telling her so I can remember. That's the only way to fight through writer's block. Don't totally give up. And I've done that on a couple projects. But I clear your head, clear your thoughts, do something else, read a book, watch a TV program, go for a walk, play with your kids, do something. It'll come to you. It eventually will come to you.
Absolutely everything he just said. Absolutely. Getting out, getting away from, putting it in the back of your mind so it's not first and foremost in your thoughts tends to unclog any story hiccups I hit. I've also found that, like, if I'm writing snow and I hit the point where it's like, I don't know what to do next, or I'm just not feeling it, I can open up another thing because I always have multiple projects going at a time. And I can jump over to another project and pick right up and go because it's the story that's giving me the hiccup, not necessarily writing. So sometimes that helps. I can just pick up and go to another story.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Hope that helps. And in fact, it helped her so much she got through a writer's block, and Meredith came in with another question. What is your editing process? Do you write hard and dirty first, then go back or edit as you go, or send it off to a professional with fresh eyes?
A lot of people say they outline their book before they start writing, and I always consider my first draft is my outline. All of my ideas are poured into that first draft. I have index cards next to me, so when I create a character, I write down all the information that I want about that character, so I know that their hair color stays the same, their eye color stay the same, and then I write. Once I get the book done, I read it. Start making my changes, editing, taking things out, adding things, strengthening a character, or just getting rid of characters completely. Once I'm comfortable with the story, then it goes to my editor, which is my wife. She tears it up, gives it back to me, and I go in and start putting in her changes that I agree with. Sometimes she'll make a suggestion that I just don't agree with, so we'll either have a conversation about it. Once I've gotten that draft done and I've read it again, made changes, it goes off to a girl named Rose. She's an editor of mine. She's actually going to edit the anthologies for Stormgate Press. And she gives it a fresh look. She reads it. She does the editing. She sends it back. I read it again. It's just a process of continue. By the time I'm done, I've read a book 6 to 8 times, maybe. I think many times I've read it maybe 12, 15. And I always read the final book because you're going to find mistakes when you get the actual book in your hand and you start digging through it and you go, oh, that should have been then, not them. So then you got to scratch that out. It's little things like that.
Mhm.
No matter how hard you try, you're not going to get them 100% free of mistakes. There's going to be something that's always going to bug you at night when you're laying in bed. Why didn't I put a semicolon there instead of a comma? That kind
Yeah.
of thing.
When I do my grammar pass like that, I don't remember who told me this. I actually start at the back page and do it backwards. Because what'll happen is if I'm doing it forward in, like reading a book, I find myself just reading the book and not catching things because I get into the story. Doing it backwards, you don't do that. You read the last page and the next to the last page, and you're not reading that way. You're not reading it like you would read a normal book, and so you're paying more attention that way. So that helps. But you're right; they still happen. I mean, the this is the last snow book. There's 3 typos that my narrator for the audiobook caught.
Yeah.
So I've got to get those fixed. And so I mean, it happens. I mean, but yes, but you have someone that does the edits, and then I do edits. And when I start the day, I usually go back and read over what I wrote yesterday because it's still kind of fresh, and I give it a pass. And sometimes I'll make little changes there, but I give it a little pass. Then I write what I write today, and then I just keep doing that. And then when it's over, I'll give it another pass. Same thing. I read it 6, 8 times, if not more. Sometimes by the time a book comes out, I'm sick of it. I've read it so many times, but it's yeah. So it's all the little things. Having a fresh set of eyes definitely helps. Beta readers are good. Yeah. So I mean, there's and so depending on what it is, depending on the length of it too, depends on, shapes things like the snows or novellas, whereas like Suicide Bomb was a big, so it's a little harder to, you don't want to like force a big thing on, so yeah, so you just try different things like that and just keep you want to put out the best product you can do. And that also isn't just the story, there still has to be someone looking at your first page with your indent, your indicia and your dedication. You don't want to spell your mom's name wrong when you dedicate the book to her. That kind of stuff. You still want to have someone that's checking those things. And does this fit? Does your cover really look good? We all, I think my covers are great, but I have some artist friends who are professional cover guys, and I go, okay, opinion time. And they'll give me honest feedback about why this doesn't work. And so things like that help too, because, that covers the first thing that people are going to see. Even if they're looking at it at thumbnail size on Amazon, that's the first thing they're going to see. So you also have to edit that as much as you do the inside of the book. So.
That's true. That's true. Meredith Lockman also says, we were talking earlier about how you present yourself, trying to get past our innate shyness to, to sell ourselves and our work to the public. Meredith says, honestly, in the past, I've tried getting authors on my shows going back years ago, and they were camera shy, wasted opportunities, if you ask me. And Meredith, I can give you a couple candidates that you want to put on your radar here. Because Meredith does a very good show on Sundays on Geek Insider. Yeah, Geek Insider.
Put us a link in here so we can.
Yeah, let's see that.
Yeah, put a link in the comments so we can see it.
I don't know where they got that stuff from. Anyway, it's not easy getting on a promotional social media circuit, but you have to be hungry enough to get out there. Now, this is a good setup for Carl's next line. Carl Wisman says, Meredith, the meek might inherit the earth, but they'll never be on the New York Times bestseller list.
I tell you, one of the best things that I co-hosted a podcast for a few years. I co-hosted the Earth Station One podcast with my buddies Mike Faber and Mike Gordon, and it was audio. We wasn't video, but we would have the same thing. We would book guests that you would get one word answers out of. So sometimes you have to but you learn a lot from interviewing people too. Like I learned a lot by interviewing other authors on how they respond to things, how they act, or now I learn a lot from watching, before I did my first Facebook Live, I based it on how Brian was doing his show because I saw what he was doing and said, okay, that works. because I didn't know how I was going to go about it. It's just me. There's nobody asking me questions, So there's a lot to be learned by how other people are doing things. So as a guy now that does interviews a lot, seeing how other people answer things, seeing how other people, I've still got to learn how to get rid of the hand talking thing, but
you're fine. You're fine. Believe me, you're okay.
But I'm good. I've learned not to pick my nose on because now there's more video things like this now. Don't pick nose. Yeah. But there's more video. There's more video opportunities now than there were a year ago. Yeah. A lot of that's because of the changes in the world have put forth reasons for people that video is more important now. I certainly think through all of this pandemic and people being stuck at home, I do think the creative community has really stepped up in keeping people entertained from their homes. I see writers reading chapters and reading whole stories for free and putting it out there for people to have that. I see actors and directors and writers and artists doing roundtable interviews or things like this, or they were doing reunions with casts of a movie from many years ago and getting them together to answer questions. And it's great that these creators have stepped up, used this medium that we have here to entertain for free, basically, in a time where people need something to keep them occupied. So
that's true.
That sounded preachy. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, you're saying nice things about me, Bobby. I appreciate that.
We'll edit that last part out.
Yeah, kill us one, Meredith. Charles, did you have anything to add?
I don't tend to do the live thing. Yeah, I should. I do a lot of pre-recorded stuff and post it. I like to edit myself. I think. I'm afraid that, I could do the show like you do, Brian, or like you have, Bobby, and read comments, because if I go to talk about myself and not read the comments, it's going to be a very short show.
But I enjoy your format too. I mean, yeah. I don't think everybody has to do it the same. Yours feels like yours is more like a nighttime talk show. Charles, because it's an interview. You're talking to one person, and it's that nice. So, and that's great. If we were all doing it the same way, I think it would, we would all start falling through the cracks. But I do like yours, and I like the effort you put in with the opening graphics and the background. All that. I mean,
yeah. I agree. And Bobby, your stuff is as different from mine as it is night and day. Although, you read the comments, but you have different reactions to things than I will. So, I think all three of us are doing something, pretty cool. I was told by one person, though, somebody who tried to actually emulate everything I did on here without really putting themselves into it, the way you have, Bobby, or the way you do, Charles. And somebody told me who it was and said, I watched your show like 2 nights ago. And I'm like, I wasn't broadcasting that. And he's like, yeah, I know. Somebody over there was doing just about the same thing you do. And that person actually contacted me later and asked, what would you do if I started wearing a fez? Do you think that would help my show? I told him where I would put that fez.
Yeah. Well, I do think too. I mean, there is something to that the host of the show really brings a lot to the not necessarily the format, but to how the show is put out there. Certainly each of us has a different personality that runs the way we would do things, so. I every so often the urge to do a podcast pops into my head, and I beat it down with a hammer. But but now with the video thing, it would be something, and it would be very similar because I love the interview process, the chat, and I love that process. I used to love the old the magazines where like there were comic magazines, but the entire magazine would be an interview with one creator. Like he really went in depth and talked for, and I like stuff like that. And every once in a while, I look at these and go, I could do that. And then another part of my brain says, you don't have time to write what's on your plate now. And talks me out of it. So, yeah.
I used to do a podcast, I don't know, I guess it's been 10 or 12 years ago, and it was called The Neutron Flow. And I had a co-host. And we did reviews of books, or we did reviews of movies, or we just talked about geek stuff. And I think if I were to do something live like this, it would have to be with a co-host. It doesn't have to be in the same room. It could be like using StreamYard and doing this, and then just talk about whatever comes to mind. Just have a conversational show, a lot like morning drive talk shows kind of thing.
Yeah.
You could review books. You could talk about music. Try not to get too political, or try not to go down that avenue, but try to keep it along the lines of the kind of things, the genres that we like. That would be something really interesting to do.
Well, the thing is, you and I could do that, and then once you're comfortable, my internet will cut out like it did tonight, and then you're flying solo. See, it'll be perfect. Oh, and speaking of great questions here, Michaela Jade says, do you find that you do better at shows or signings where the other authors are engaging their audience, or at shows where they stand behind their table with their arms crossed, not talking? That's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer because most of the time I'm not paying attention to what they're doing in terms of I'm not sitting there going like, man, that guy's selling really good. What's he doing? Well, in the slow moments you walk around, you kind of look, but I mean, I don't focus on how other people are selling. You certainly sometimes see it and pick ideas up. But I prefer, there are times when I don't do it, but I prefer to stand behind my table so that when someone comes up, I'm looking them in the eye instead of looking up at them from the chair. So I do like to stand and talk to them. And that way, when they ask about a book, we can point to it or, I do try to do that and be engaging. I say hello to everybody that walks. But now I'm not a hard sales guy. I'd probably sell more if I was, but I don't. Somebody comes up and kind of looks and say, hey, how's it going? And they're like, hi. And if they keep going, I just let them keep going. But if they stop, I'll tell them whatever. I've got the sales pitch. It's quick, it's easy, and here's the books. You look at them, and I step back and let the books do the bulk of the selling, and then I'm here if you have questions.
There's a writer named David Beam that I love how he sells at conventions. He'll take his book and he'll pick his book up and he'll show it to the person at the table, and he'll turn his book over because he's usually got characters on the back and he's talking about it. And while he's doing it, he's slowly handing it to them till they take it in their hand. And the next thing you know, they're buying that book and walking away with it. And it does not work for me.
There are some people that just have a natural sales charisma. Yeah. My friend John Hartness can sell books he doesn't just sell one, he sells you the whole series. And it starts with him going, when people walk by, he goes, what do you like to read? And they answer him and he goes, hey, check this out. And it gets them to the table, they're there, and then the natural charisma helps sell the books. And I've met people before that's got that. It's a natural thing. What's that old could sell ice cubes to Eskimos?
Yeah.
I know writers that have been blessed with that gift. And then I see others that work really hard at it. And so, it's you just have to find what works. And,
the key thing at a show is, like you said, stay on your feet. Don't sit in your chair. Say hi to everybody, even if there's no chance of them coming to your table. Be very open. Because if you sit in the chair and you're doing this, that's just a sign for them to say, I'm going to keep on walking. You want to be open with everybody that comes by your table. And hopefully you'll hook one of them and reel them in. The next thing you know, you're selling some books. So you be who you are, but be better than who you are. Like I said earlier, be that persona, be someone else behind that table, sell your books, be the showman.
And whether they buy a book or not, they leave my table with a card, knowing where the books are. Because a lot of times, it's easy to go broke at a con. I mean, it's easy. I do it day one, it seems like. So I get it. Sometimes people don't have the money, but you know what? They're going to get paid again next week. And so even after a convention, I will notice a little uptick in sales on Amazon like the week after. Yep. And it's probably, I don't know it for a fact, but it's an educated guess that some of those are from people I met at the con. And so that was an eye-opener when I learned that, because when I first started doing cons as a guy behind the table, I went in with this, I've got to sell X number of dollars for this to be a good show. And that was all I focused on. And I realized I'm putting out vibes that are keeping people away, because I'm not being fun and engaging. All I'm worried about is selling. And I realized that it was turning people away. And so when I realized that, you know what, this is part of your marketing and promotion, don't worry about how much you sell. Sell stuff, that's awesome. If you don't sell stuff, you go, well, I learned something. And I found myself enjoying the experience of being behind the table and talking up the books more. And then the funny thing was I started selling more as a result, because I was not worried about selling more. So it took that pressure off me, which made me not put that pressure on the people that came to the table. So yes, but it's one of those things you just learn by doing it.
Yeah. I walk into every show thinking, I'm not going to sell anything in this show. I'm going to do any good at all. And if I sell one or two books, I'm happy. But that's kind of the mentality you have to have. You want to go in there and have fun with it. Mm-hmm. I do little things. I put my iPad up and I run little commercials, like little slideshows of my books. Sometimes people they zone in on that visual. The next thing you know, they're walking over to the table and they're watching that slide on my iPad. And the next thing you know, you're talking to them, and hopefully by the time they walk away, you've made a sale.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can do with your table. Like, I don't just lay books on a table. I have some laying, some standing. I have some things that are even higher than others, so it builds up. And then I have, like, some of these posters you see on the wall, I'll take with me and put them behind the table. So there's a snow poster and a domino lady poster that might grab someone's attention. And so they come over to check out what the poster is. So, so instead of just books laying flat on a table, I've got them on stands where you can see them from across the room. You try to make it, it's all about presentation, and you learn what works as you go. And yeah.
Well, anything you can do to start a conversation with the customer. You don't know how many books I've sold that started out with them saying, Bez's are cool.
Exactly.
That's why I started wearing it.
Yeah.
Bill, go ahead, Bobby.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, I'm not used to that. I'm sorry. Somebody agreeing with me. Throw me. I'm sorry about that. Bill Sarton has a good question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I already know Brian's answer is 2025.
I don't know. The last time I answered this question, I didn't foresee 2020 coming out like this at all.
Yeah. Whose crystal ball doesn't seem cloudy tonight? All right.
Jeez.
I hope I'm still alive in 5 years. If I'm still alive, it's a good day.
Yeah.
I think we've got a consensus on that.
I always like to tell people my go-to answer is, in 5 years I want to be a New York Times best-selling author. Never happens, but it's what in 5 years that's what I want.
I keep telling people I want to be part of the 1%. I yearn to be an oppressor. I want people complaining about me on the evening news. Michaela Jade says, I'm trying to get into speaking. What advice do you have for trying to get the message out there that I want to speak?
Once you know what your message is, because I don't know what type of speaking you're thinking about, but I do get this a lot from people that write nonfiction, because a lot of nonfiction comes with I'm teaching something or I'm educating something. Find events that fit that mold. If you're writing religious nonfiction, find religious organizations they're always looking for speakers, and you might sell a few books. I talked to a guy, I guess this was last year now, since we haven't done any events this year. He was a woodworker, and he did woodworking, and he built things out of wood, and he wanted to do a tutorial, and he wanted to find ways to get his book out, the information about his book that was a tutorial out there. And so I suggested there's all kinds of trade shows and conventions that deal with wood and crafts and building things. And so using that, he was able to get himself doing panels and workshops at those, to where he can share his knowledge, but he can also get his book in front of people. It's a little harder with fiction because, but there are places that do it. I've done 1-day workshops where it's like, we're going to talk about writing thrillers, or we're going to talk about mysteries, things like that. So, I mean, there are ways to do it for fiction, but if it's nonfiction, there's always groups. One that might actually work, especially for Charles, I started pitching like Lance Starr books to small airports, because they have little bookshops and little bookstores at the entrance to the airfield, where they sell books. And so I made sure they all knew that, hey, if for people that like fiction, here's these this pilot action adventure series. It didn't move a lot, but it moved a few. So, so if you find places where people congregate or will get together that have that similar interest, most of the time you can find a speaking engagement associated.
Yeah. Charles, do you have anything to add?
I'm not much of a speaker. I've only given a few talks about writing, but I don't go out of my way to look. Like I said earlier, I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't go out of my way to look for places to talk.
So I'm announcing that Charles is a regular on this show starting next week, and we'll burn it out of him.
Your new co-host.
That's right. My God, don't admit any weakness around me. We can smell fear.
You know what though? If you're interested, I would say if you're interested in getting into it and trying to do stuff, and you want to start small, I've done this. Reach out to your local library. I'd like to do a talk about writing. You may get 20 people. I'll go to your local comic shop. I'd like to do a lot of them do things on Saturdays mornings when it's not super crowded. We'll have an event. You can come and talk. And so it's not going to be a huge crowd. Like I said, you're probably going to get 10, 20 people maybe, but it allows you to talk to a smaller audience that's not as terrifying as talking to a room with 100 people in it or 1,000 people in it. And so that helps. Do it with a partner. When I started doing stuff like that, I had friends that were writers that lived close to me, and we would book as a group, and the two of us would go and we would do our spiel and we'd talk about writing. We'd take a lot like what we're doing here, question and answers from the audience, talking, and we came with a few things prepared that we could talk about, get them comfortable with us, you comfortable with them. They start asking questions, and then you've got this nice back and forth going, and you find yourself easing into it. So it's, at least I did it when I did it, I eased into it, and it was a lot less terrifying for me. So those are ideas if you're not, if you are an introvert, because if it's your comic shop, the people there already, because it's your comic shop. You go in there every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. So you're starting out around people that, if they don't, the owners certainly probably know you, but a lot of people will, you have that thing in common. So that helps.
And Michaela, take his advice, because this is a guy that used to read stuff like this in front of class.
Absolutely.
That's right. Look how far he's come.
Yes. Now he won't shut up.
Or as I tell people, I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle rather. So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny
when I screw up an old joke.
when I get invited to do podcasts that I've never done before, I've never been on before, and I get this question. It's like, now our show is an hour long. I'm like, I can do an hour without you. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, ask me to tell you a little about myself. I can kill an hour.
Yeah.
So.
You're preaching to the choir on this half of the screen. I'm telling you that.
Yeah.
It's like, I was a play tester one time for a games company, and they said, well, just play this game and say the first thing that pops into your mind. I said, I do that 24 hours a day for this job.
Well, I'm by myself most of the day.
Yeah.
So I don't talk much oddly enough, I don't talk much during the day. So when I get on one of these, it's like the little floodgate opens and it's like, all right.
You're just making up for the guess that, are you a writer? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're making up for a lot of ground here that we've been losing. So
Yeah.
Now Cindy Cap has a question here. I know this is going to be good. In fact, I think we're going to close the show on, because I could talk to you two all day and all night long, but we recognize that everybody's got to get out of here, and we are super behind in comments. So which means this is awesome. I really love it. Not even counting my little 5-minute hiatus. But anyway, Cindy Cap says, what is the most peculiar way you've sold a book? As they both try to narrow it down to just one.
There have been some interesting ones where I remember one year I went to do my taxes, and the lady that normally did my taxes was no longer in that office. So there was another lady in the office I'd never dealt with before, and I go in, and so I introduced to her, and I give her my stuff, and she goes, "Writer, huh? I like to read. What do you got? What are you writing?" I said, "I got a bunch of stuff in the car if you want to take a look." She said, "Yeah, let's go do that." She puts my stuff down. We go out in the parking lot. I open up the trunk, and it's a hatchback. It was like a SUV. And we look in the back, and I'm showing her books, and she says, "How many books you got in there?" And I don't know. I think I had 10 or 20 different titles at the time. And she goes, "I tell you what, I love to read. Give me one of each, and I'll do your taxes for free." And,
wow.
because, as you guys know, as a creator and a business owner, our taxes get expensive because you're paying for all the different papers. So for, 20 books, I got a hell of a deal that year. And that was probably the one, because she was just like, "Yeah, I love to read. Let's do it." So, yeah.
That's fantastic.
No work on my part whatsoever, which is my favorite kind of work.
I love it. So, Charles, you look thoughtful.
Yeah, I am. I don't know if I sold any books from it, to tell you the truth, but just last week I was in the line at the Kroger, and there was a woman in front of me who my wife used to work with, and she said, "So, are you still writing books?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm still writing." She said, "How many have you written now? 5 or 6?" And I said, "Well, my 23rd one comes out soon." And the guy working behind the counter said, "What kind of books?" So I told him what kind of books. So he got a piece of paper and a pen, handed it to me, and I wrote down all my information. And then I noticed that on Amazon I had a few actually physical copies sold within that 24-hour period. And I'm thinking, I bet you that kid bought a bunch of books. So I'm going to have to go back there and find out. So I think just word of mouth, talking to people. I'm not ashamed to tell people I'm a writer. A lot of people ask what I do for a living, and I say I'm a chef. I'm also an independent author. And that always either somehow sells a book, or they get the information, or they come and find it. So I just think as unique way, I don't know. I don't not as cool as Bobby's, but definitely giving your information out to people like I did this past helps.
Definitely.
That's why I always keep books in the car. If I'm driving, like if I'm in, I do go off with my dad quite a bit. He likes to take rides, and I don't carry book. Like I'm not just going to move everything every time he wants to go somewhere. But if I'm driving my car, there's always books in the car. There's always business cards in my pocket.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can hand those off. My parents were pretty good at talking when I wasn't with them. My dad was, I've sold a lot of books over the year. When my dad worked, especially, I sold a lot of books from him telling people at work, But we'll, like I said, we take these rides sometimes and we'll stop somewhere and he'll tell somebody, I don't bring it up just willy nilly, but like if I go in a bookstore, people tend to ask and, so sometimes the word of mouth helps having, where when people ask, you can tell them, here, go check here, find it. And because I do that, I meet a lot of people and then I'll see them again later and they're like, so I read your one book. And I'm like, have you read any more since that one I bought? And I'm like, yeah. And, it's like, it's about 100 more since then. Really? So it's, but yeah, it's, you always have to be ready for that. Someone says, I'd like a book. And, I've also had people that go, I want to buy a book, but I want it autographed. So that made me set up a store. You can buy books from me. If it's people I know, I don't just do it for total strangers, but if it's people I know and they're like, that live close, they're like, you want to meet for lunch and I'll buy some books. Okay. I know you will do that, but I'm leery about meeting total strangers out for dinner, but
you're on that Craigslist thing, right?
yeah. I'm not quite that outgoing yet. But yeah, so yeah, no, you're always, the promotion thing it's always there. Even if you're not doing it actively, there are passive ways to do it, making things available that advertise, I have a buddy one year at Heroes Con a couple of years ago. I wasn't there, but through the weekend, I kept getting emails from people that were there going, oh my God, there's a guy here wearing a snow shirt. And it was my buddy John had bought a snow shirt and he was wearing it on Saturday at the convention. And people were like so cool that they saw somebody wearing a shirt from a guy they knew, that people were taking pictures of my buddy John and sending it to me going, oh my God, there's a guy here, and I'm sure you would get that. Like I saw your Captain Hawkland shirt, that's passive advertising. You're not beating people over the head, but they're going to go, Captain Hawkland, who is that? And it's a marketing tool. It's an ice breaking tool. I'm sure when people see Brian with the, especially you've got this really cool, logo down here with the fez and the hair and the bow tie. That's branding. That's something you do. You're not beating people over the head with I'm selling stuff, but that's you selling your brand. And I think, and it's the kind of stuff that we do that sells us, where people get to know us. Over the years, peculiar ways of I've been doing cons a long time. I have had people come up to my table and go, I see you at these all the time and I've never bought anything from you. Today's the day I'm going to change that. And it's not because the book grabbed them. It's just like, obviously you're here all the time. Maybe there's something to your work and they'll buy a book. So there's cool things we can do as creators that are you're not beating people over the head with it. And I find those to be, I tend to do better sales that way than I am trying to beg people to buy a book.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I sold a book one time just because I explained the difference between copyright and trademark, and she was amused by it. I'm probably the only person that ever made somebody laugh when describing that thing.
You'd be amazed how many people will buy a book from you because they like you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're trying to sell yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what social media does a lot too, because not every post I post is about me selling a book, but it's about something I do. And if I do something that, if I go and watch a movie and I review a movie that a reader likes, we have similar taste in movies. maybe we have similar tastes in books, So there's all kinds of stuff you're doing that way that even though you're not actively, it's not an active thing you're trying to do, you're still promoting it that way. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like one of my favorite YouTube channels right now. I watch a lot of legal ones, especially dealing with contracts and copyrights and trademarks and stuff. And there's this one lawyer out of Toronto who started doing a vlog on YouTube. And he has this very fast-paced delivery, and wasn't sure I'd like him. But in his first he has like a 5-second intro, and in that it's scenes of him playing with his family, pulling out a huge fish from the lake, and then doing a backflip to dismount from a swing set, and doing a slip and slide and stuff. And I'm like, this is wacky. I want to stick around and watch it. And, and because of that opening, I learned, that was my gateway to liking him as, a person. And then you sit there and you listen to him, and then you get into, his peculiar sense of humor, his delivery and everything. And, you're absolutely right about that. Now, like I said, we have been on for an hour and a half, less 5 minutes, and you two have been amazing. Now, we are going to close this.
Now, some of us have been on 2.5 hours. You were gone long.
I'll be on 5 minutes after you go, okay? I will make up for it, Bobby. I will atone, I promise. I will 3 Hail Marys and fix my internet. Yeah, I know how this goes. So anyway, we got one last call. I do apologize to everyone who has given us a question, and we haven't gotten to it. But you've given us so many great questions and comments, and I want to close on this one. From Rick Bradley, Charles, which actor would you like to play Captain Hawkland in a movie? Bobby, who would you like to play Snow?
I'll let Charles go first.
My wife and I were talking about this last week because I was thinking, who today would be a good actor to play Captain Hawkland? And all my answers kept going back to the golden age of Hollywood, with some of the actors from that time. And it's still up in the air, but I guess Kirk Douglas would make a really good Captain Hawkland.
Nice.
I like it.
And there's a character in the book named Hardy, and my wife seemed to think that Jimmy Stewart would be the actor to play him. And my action figure here, my friend Dennis made this for me. This face, we get it real close here if I can. This is supposed to be Jake Gyllenhaal. Thank goodness it doesn't look like Jake Gyllenhaal, because that's not Captain Hawkland. But that's who I would choose. I don't know who I would pick from today's Hollywood to pick.
Yeah.
Playing.
Yeah.
It's such an ingrained character in that golden age of time that I can only see golden age actors playing.
Yeah.
I try not to get too hooked up into that, because then I have this fear of I'll always want that. And if I don't get that person, I'm going to be very annoyed. But with Snow, there's actually 2 good answers. I'm going to turn the camera. It's probably hard to see, but the poster over here, it's really hard to see here, but it's there we go. When I was talking to Jeff, Jeffrey Hayes, who did this piece of art, he was asking me questions about who I thought, if I had an actor in mind. And when I first created the character, it's been a while ago, I love the idea of when I was a kid, I had hair that would never stay combed, no matter what you did to it, what you put in it. And there was an actor I knew that had that same problem, and it was Joe Flanagan, who was on Stargate Atlantis at the time. And so I said, base his hair on that guy. And so he did the whole look kind of based on him. So I liked that. But then later on, I also had this thought that based on personality, I would love to see Aldous Hodge from Leverage and City on a Hill. I think with his personality and the way he can do snark and attitude, he would be a perfect Snow. Now, he looks nothing like the guy on this poster. But personality wise, I thought he would be an awesome fit for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did settle on Gerald McRaney for Archer. I did settle on that one. Because I was thinking he could play that, go from playful to don't mess with me real easy. Because I've seen him do it in so many things that he would be perfect in that.
Yeah. Now, I got asked about Volcana, and I've been thinking about it because basically Volcana is two different people. But I think the person who could play both very well and is very physical, and it won't be her first superhero ride, Lucy Lawless.
Nice.
Yeah, I see her more as kind of like a dirty blonde, half brunette, half blonde. But if anyone is a good enough actress to physically separate the two, as she would have to do, because Angelique Forge is physically impaired, as we have in the first book. Volcana, Rebirth of the Champion, available on Amazon right now. Never pass up a chance. So anyway, so my answer would be Lucy Lawless. I think that would be great. And I would cry if I didn't get her. But anyway, we have been on for quite some time. Some people more than others, I know. But I have had a blast. I do want to apologize to everyone who didn't get their question asked. So I think the only thing I can do is invite these two guys back for maybe another round, and we'll give them another shot at your questions if they are willing.
Anytime.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Okay. We're starting in about 1 minute then. And
we'll need a 5-minute bathroom break.
Yeah, because I'm going to pull Amy Hale here in a minute and get up and go.
I understand.
I'm on my third thing of water here. Yeah,
I get you guys. I do get you. So anyway, let's tell you what. Let's give everyone a chance. You marshal your thoughts. Ignore your bladders, and don't think of running water. And now think of how people can stay in touch with you. Let's start with Charles, since he wasn't taking a drink. So Charles, tell the people how they can stay in touch with you and check out your amazing work.
Well, you can find me on Facebook the most. I have a group called Author Charles F. Millhouse Presents, and I post a lot of stuff on there about my books and other writers. If you're a writer or creator, you can come to that group anytime and post something about whatever you've got coming out, art-wise, or a new book or short story or a short story collection, anything. You can post it on that without even asking. I want creators to do that. Also, while you're there, and you can also find me on stormgatepress.com. But while you're over to the author Charles F. Millhouse, this book here, Absolution, is currently up for an Utopia Award for Best Science Fiction Novel, Dystopian Science Fiction Novel of the Year. And if you could go there and vote, I appreciate it, because this is the first thing that's ever been nominated that I've written that I didn't nominate myself. I don't know who nominated this, but I really appreciate the vote. And the link is on Author Charles F. Millhouse Presents.
Excellent. And now let's bring to the forefront here Mr. Bobby Nash. Bobby, tell them how everyone can stay in touch with you.
Okay. Well, I'm all over social media as well. Facebook, Author Bobby Nash is my author page. Twitter, Instagram. Twitter is at Bobby Nash. Instagram is Bobby Nash Writes. I used to have Author Bobby Nash until it got hacked, and so I had to come up with a new one. My website is bobbynash.com. It's pretty easy. Right there on the bottom of the screen, as a matter of fact. And if you sign up for my newsletter through bobbynash.com, it's right there on the left side of the page at the top. You can download Snowfalls, the first snow book, for free as an ebook in the ebook format of your choice. My publishing company, Ben Books, is at ben-books.com. And we have this, I gave Snow his own website, so abrahamsnow.com. And then, as Brian says on here a lot, and I'm very appreciative for, it's the hashtag the Summer of Snow.
Definitely. It's always the summer of snow. Thank you, Bobby. And I'm Brian K. Morris of Rising Tide Publication. We also have a Rising Tide page on Facebook, as well as our own YouTube channel, which we hope you'll check out sometime. We have recent episodes of our vlogs on that platform there. Also, I'm on Instagram, on Twitter, mostly on Facebook, and we also do a 3 times a week interactive talk show called Nevermind the Furthermore, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And, of course, we've got this show every Tuesday night at 8 p.m., 7 p.m. Central. And also we are on iHeartRadio and several other places around the interwebs. And but look for risingtidepublications.pub. And also when you're at the website, risingtide.pub, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter. The next issue will go out July 1st, all right? And I would like to take this opportunity to thank my 2 guests here, the amazing Charles F. Millhouse and Bobby Nash. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. Appreciate your coming on here.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the heck out of it. And so I will close it out so you two can go ring out your Depends. And so I'll sign off for everyone here. Again, apologies to everyone who didn't get their questions read on here, but thank you for asking them. So we're going to have these 2 back, and so you can get your shot in then. So everyone, thank you for being here. I'm Brian K. Morris, Rising Tide Publications. Don't forget, stay smart. Wash your damn hands, stay safe, and never apologize for being awesome. Thank you for being here. And I've got to get to the graphic here because I've been having so much fun. I forgot I've got to direct this thing. Anyway, thank you again for being here on Clever. See you next week with our special guests next week. Yes, I should mention that too. Amy Hale and T.L. Shively. We're going to discuss book contracts, do or don'ts. So come join us next week on Clever Title Pending. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Clever Title Pending, a Rising Tide Publications and Brian K. Morris production. A member of Comic Book Advocating Network and sponsored by GeekInsider.com. Become part of our show with sponsorship and advertising opportunities. For details, contact advertising@geekinsider.com or visit podcast.geekinsider.com. The Geek Insider podcast is available on your favorite app, so please hit the follow button and share it out to your friends. Because if you don't, you might have to turn in your geek card.